Number 13. Accept disgrace willingly. Accept misfortune as a human condition. What do you mean by accept disgrace willingly? Accept being unimportant. Do not be concerned with loss or gain. This is called accepting disgrace willingly. What do you mean by accept misfortune as a human condition? Misfortune comes from having a body. Without a body, how could there be misfortune? Surrender yourself humbly. Then you can be trusted to care for all things. Love the world as your own self. Then you can truly care for all things. Okay. So what is he saying here? He's saying very severe things here. He's not saying bear with disgrace.
Yes.
Sometimes you get disgrace, sometimes not. When it comes, bow your head. He's saying accept disgrace, accept it.
Yes.
Accept it willingly. So you should want to be disgraced, he's saying. Then he's saying accept misfortune as a human condition. He's not saying accept it willingly, but he's saying misfortune is what you should expect.
Yes.
It's a human condition. We are here to have misfortune.
Yes.
Which is very different from how people live. Because for us misfortune is not our daily bread, but actually what interrupts and interferes our daily bread. So the first sentence is accept disgrace willingly. Second, accept misfortune as a human condition. Now it's interesting that he's not doing it very often, but he's breaking here for a dialogue, as though he feels that the first two sentences are too difficult for the reader.
Yes.
So he allows the reader to make it hard for him and not to accept the sentence and to ask about the sentence. So the first question is about the first sentence, accept disgrace willingly. And then there is the sentence, what do you mean by accept disgrace willingly? So Lao Tse said, for me, to accept disgrace willingly, which means that someone is treating me like I'm a piece of shit. And, let's see what is disgrace. Yes. Let's say you are a prime minister and you are presented to the public as a traitor in your country.
Yes.
That's disgrace. Or you are a head of a company and you are presented as a person that stole the pension fund.
Yes.
Not from your workers, but from the widows of the workers. I mean, I'm talking about
Yes.
a very, very remarkable disgrace. So disgrace is taking someone that used to be graced
Yes.
and disgracing him, putting him in the center of the town, naked, when everyone is cursing him, laughing at him, making a mockery out of him. He was high and low. So this is giving a bit of meat to it. Saying, what do you mean by accept disgrace willingly? He's saying, accept being unimportant. Which means that if you are not important, if you are unimportant, then disgrace should not do anything to you. Disgrace is only hurting if there is a shadow of importance in you.
Yes. Totally.
So he is putting a very high standard for human beings. I mean, it doesn't matter which human being you will go to, and you say, misfortune is what is your daily bread.
Yes.
Disgrace is what should happen to you without you moving an inch,
Yes.
because you're unimportant. So people do not live as their misfortune is their daily bread. They live as misfortune is a bad thing that happens, which might not happen again. And the second thing is people live with feeling that they are important. Do not be concerned with loss or gain. What does it mean by don't be concerned with loss or gain?
People always are concerned with what's in it for me, or how can I achieve something more efficiently, or who is doing better than who.
Yes. It's to do with interests. Any situation, what can I get out of it? Am I winning? Am I losing? And he's saying if you do not concern with loss or gain, then you are accepting disgrace willingly.
Yes.
So he's saying accepting disgrace willingly is A, being unimportant, B, is being able not to wish to gain and not caring if you lose. Now I think this is too much for most people.
That's too
Because
much.
this is what life is for most people. Most life for people is not to be disgraced, to gain and not to lose, and not to experience misfortune.
That's, I think, one of the biggest ego killers in this.
Absolutely. So the listener doesn't leave Lao Tse alone. He's saying, wait a minute. What do you mean by accepting misfortune as the human condition? Human condition is fortune? I mean, just because we're human beings, bad things should happen to us? Then he's saying, misfortune comes from having a body. This is a very deep and mysterious sentence. Without a body, how could there be misfortune? So it's a very interesting question. Why having a body would bring you misfortune?
Well, maybe it has to do with the previous verse. The body has the senses. Body wants things. The body wants to compete and to race and to madden the mind. He's saying that if you have a body, it will want things and it will maybe kill your heart.
Okay, this is one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is that human being is a combination of soul within a body, where in between we have an ego, which should be transformed to a permanent higher I. Now, the combination of a soul and the body is taking something perfect and putting it in something which is relative.
Yes.
And the relationship between body and the soul is like putting something in a very high speed into something which in a low speed.
Yes.
There is no synchronization between the body and the soul.
Yes.
And the body has got its own wants, the soul has got its own wants. When you combine both, then you're bound to get accidents.
Yes. Maybe it's not only that, maybe it's war, because he's talking about surrendering. If you need to surrender, it means you're in a war.
Where do you get surrender?
Surrender yourself humbly.
Where? Later on?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't reach that yet.
Yes.
But I want to talk about the body and why the body brings misfortune. See, it's interesting. Bad things will happen to you. The question is, do animals experience misfortune? I don't think so. Animals live their life quite peacefully.
Yes.
And harmoniously. I mean, if we take man out of the scene and we talk about a wild situation in the forest or in the jungle, from time to time a rabbit can meet a tiger.
Yes.
But on the whole, they don't experience misfortune.
Yes.
So we experience misfortune, we have got the mix of high within the low.
Yes.
And when you get the low leading the high, which is the soul, and the high depending upon the low, and the low is limited and clumsy, this is the body. Relative, clumsy and limited. And within it you have a high diamond, which is totally dependent upon the body.
Yes.
you're bound to get misfortune. See, can you imagine that you, as you are now, instead of walking on your feet and using your eyes and deciding where you go, I summon a great giant, which is 4 meters tall and 3 meters wide. He has got one eye which is functioning at 10%. And this giant is at the mental age of 6 months. And I say, you are going to be put in his hands. And wherever he goes, you go. And whatever he does with you, that will be your fate. This is how the soul feels being in the body.
Wow.
So misfortune is the combination of the high spark, which is an intelligent spark, is a real being, totally at the mercy of a body.
I understand. I have never seen the proportions like this, but I understand that this is how can misfortune be.
I think so. I think so. Then the last 2 sentences. Surrender yourself humbly. Then you can be trusted to care for all things. Love the world as your own self. Then you can truly care for all things. The interesting thing is that he repeats care for all things as the final sentence, which he repeats twice. Surrender yourself humbly, then you can be trusted to care for all things. Love the world as your own self, then you can truly care for all things. It's interesting because you see, he begins with saying, you're too important. You think about yourself only. You want not to be disgraced. You want that misfortune will not happen to you. You want to gain, you don't want to lose. Then he's saying, if you want to care for all things, just a moment, who says people want to care for all things?
Yes.
People want to satisfy their own aspirations and wishes for self-glorification and self-pleasure. So he's doing a flip-flop here. He's actually laughing and mocking the people.
Yes.
He's saying what you should really want is to forget about you and to care for everything else. And then you will find peace. He's not saying you will find peace, but this is coming out of it. If I get something out of it, it's peace, because when I forget me and I care about everything else, then I'm not subject to the falling and climbing up of the tides of life.
Yes.
One moment is misfortune, one moment is fortune, one moment I'm disgraced, one moment I'm not. One moment I'm gaining, one moment I'm losing. He's saying, listen, I've got advice for you. Forget about yourself. Care about everything else. Love the world as your own self. Which means, if there are people dying in Congo, you should care for them as you care for you. Surrender yourself humbly. Just give up. But don't just give up humbly.
Yes.
Why? So you can care for all things. So if there is a verse here which is anti-egotism,
Yes.
opposite of egocentricness, is this. I think he's actually mocking and making a joke out of human beings, because he knows no one can stand these conditions.
Yes.
Because people are living for the opposite of what he's writing here. And what he's saying, okay, you want to be wise, you want to be illumined, you want to be awakened, no problem. That's what you need to do. You need to give up your own love of self. and to love of the world more than you love you. Just forget self-importance.
Yes.
There is this beautiful saying of Jesus saying that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to come to heaven.
Yes.
So the rich man will never give up his riches. And people will not give up their own self-importance. So people come to spiritual paths. But what's the point of being a spiritual path if your ego is in the center? What's important for you is to gain and not to lose and not to have misfortune. And when you have misfortune, you curse everyone.
Yes.
This is the real work that a person should do on himself. To be totally unpersonal about his own personal life. When he reaches that state and he becomes part of the world, then you can talk to him about trying to reach a higher level of development, trying to think about illumination. But most people are not willing to pay this price. They're not willing to upgrade their own inner life to be selfless.
Yes. So there are two big powers, I think, in this conversation, in these two verses. One is the power of the body, of the world, and one of the soul, or the inner world. And they're in war, and if nothing is done...
They're not in war, but the soul is in the mercy of something very much coarse and not aware of the fact that he's got in custodianship something
Yes.
very high which depended upon him.
But what he's saying is...
The body doesn't see himself as needing to take care of the soul. The body actually is in the service of the ego.
Yes.
Doing whatever the person wants him to do so he will feel good and not feel not good. Until we drive the body so hard it becomes ill.
So if I understand you correct, the thing is that the body is taking care of its own self, of the body, and is taking the soul, or maybe the heart, to work for his side also.
No, the body is not taking care of its own self. The body is in the service of the egotism of the human being.
Yes.
Wanting to experience food, sex, joy, gain, and the body is being driven by the wish of the person to have a successful, important life. Now, what did you say about the relationship between the soul and the body?
The body is capturing the soul and is putting it in a dungeon.
That's right.
And he's saying, and he's, as you said in the previous verse, is even bribing. He wants that the soul will work for him.
No. The body doesn't want anything from the soul. And the body doesn't bribe the soul. It is the psychology of the human brain, mind, which is bribing the heart. Talking about something else completely. The heart is not the soul.
Okay.
The heart is your inner compass. Soul is something much, much deeper, much more precious, much more noble inside. And basically the body is not aware of the fact that there is a soul inside. And it's acting as though the soul is not there. Now because the soul is totally dependent upon the body, if the body is becoming too fast, too hot, too full of desires, too full of pressure, too full of greed, too driven by the passions of its owners, the more it prisons the soul. The more there is hot, the more it's fast, the more there is racing, the soul gets more and more and more captivated. It needs the body to let go. It needs the body to be spacious and to allow emptiness, to quieten the emotions and the greed and the race to die down.
Yes.
And only when the emotions and the body are slowing down can the soul open up and fill the space. And I believe that when this is done, there will be better synchronization between the soul and the body, and then there will be less misfortune.
So,
accidents always happen because of lack of synchronization.
yes.
people are not synchronized with their soul. You need to slow down the body to let the soul come out, so there will be a synchronization between both.
Yes. I feel that Lao Tse is telling us maybe to be a gentleman with our souls, to allow it to be.
You see, it's interesting because, to be perfectly honest, Lao Tse is not talking about the soul here.
Okay.
All he's saying is that we experience misfortune because of the body. I have got my own personal, private interpretation.
Okay.
How come living in the body brings you misfortune? Because of lack of synchronization with our soul.
I understand.
He's not saying that. I'm saying, he doesn't give an explanation. Why living in a body you get misfortune. You gave one explanation, which is fine. I gave my explanation.
Okay.
Because I'm the one who's giving the interpretation.
Yes.
But it's my explanation. You see, I've got something to say about interpretation before we close this. I don't think that interpretation should be 100% correct. I don't think interpretation needs to vow for perfection,
Yes.
to be correct. This is not the idea. Interpretation is bound to mistake by the fact that it's interpretation.
Yes.
If you know the truth behind something, you don't need interpretation. You know it. Interpretation is because you are in a semi-dark.
Yes.
And I think that I give marks for interpretation not because of accuracy, because I've got no right to know, no way to know if it's accurate or not. It's interpretation.
Yes.
But by how creative and daring the interpretation is, and how many worlds it opens through the interpretation. And one more thing I say, which I said many times before when I do interpretation of body language, which is my profession, body language expert. Any interpretation is better than none. Because you try to open the world which is behind.
Yes.
So, it doesn't have to be true or right, my interpretation. Besides, there's no one to say whether it's true or not true.
Yes.
But I try to do my interpretation daring, courageous, creative, and wide-ranging as much as possible.
Yes. I think most people are not talking about things that you can't talk about.
Yeah, people are, you see, it's interesting, people are afraid to do interpretation.
Yes.
People come to me in my workshops and lectures about body language and they say, isn't it dangerous what you do? And I say, what do you mean? And they say, well, you could be wrong. You might be saying about this person that he's closed or shy, but maybe he's suffering from kidney condition.
Yes.
Or maybe he just came from a bad car accident. How do you know you're not making a terrible mistake? And I'm saying, danger for me is not giving the wrong interpretation. Because if you do interpretation which is wrong and you keep doing interpretation, you are bound to get better at it if you learn from your mistakes. What is dangerous is not giving interpretation. What is dangerous is not giving it.
Yes.
Because if you don't give it, you have 100% failure. If you do interpretation, you can have 99-degree failure.
Yes.
But something must be right when you try to understand. Never give up trying to understand because of the fear that you will be wrong.
Yes.
Be wrong. That's the only way to learn and be better.
Yes.
And with this, I will end this transmission of interpretation. Thank you very much for watching.